Every smile hides a secret. What if I told you that it only takes 2 moments, just two tiny cracks in time, to truly see the real person hiding behind the mask? Not hours of conversation, not years of friendship, not therapy sessions filled with confession and tears. Just 2 moments. Moments so small they almost escape notice. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept yourself completely." And the truth is, most people can't. They don't. They won't. Because what hides beneath the surface isn't polished or perfect. It's raw, untamed, unfiltered. It's full of fears, regrets, insecurities, and sometimes darkness. That's why they smile so often, why they say kind things, why they pretend to be okay, because the shadow within them, that unseen, hungry part of the psyche, is terrified of being noticed, terrified of being understood, terrified of being rejected. But here's the secret Jung uncovered. The truth always leaks out. It slips through the cracks when the ego is distracted, when the social mask falls away for just a heartbeat. And if you know what to look for, you'll never be fooled by a fake smile again. Let's dive deep into the unconscious and uncover the subtle signs that reveal what people truly feel, who they really are, and what they desperately hide behind their words and gestures. This isn't manipulation, it's awareness, a kind of psychological vision that allows you to see through illusions. Once you learn this, you'll never look at anyone the same way again. Watch how they treat the powerless. If you want to know someone's true character, don't watch how they treat the rich or the famous. Watch how they treat the forgotten, the invisible, the ones society ignores. Notice their posture when a cleaner walks into the room. Listen to their tone when speaking to the delivery driver. Look into their eyes when a child asks for help, because in those brief, unscripted moments, their shadow speaks louder than their words ever could. Jung famously said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But what if everything we ignore about others can also reveal who we are at the deepest level?" We live in a world addicted to the performance of kindness. Online gestures, curated empathy, acts of generosity posted for validation. But the real test of character happens when there's nothing to gain. No audience, no applause, no witnesses. That's why the waiter rule became famous in modern psychology. If someone treats a waiter poorly, they're not a kind person. They're just good at acting. Jung, however, took this further. To him, cruelty to the powerless wasn't just rudeness, it was a fracture in the soul, a psychological wound bleeding into behavior. When someone mocks the weak, belittles the vulnerable, or ignores those beneath them, they aren't expressing strength. They're exposing a deep, unresolved pain. A superiority complex is never about real power, it's about fear. Behind every arrogant man is a child who once felt invisible. Behind every condescending voice is a person terrified of feeling small again. So they project their pain outward, making others feel insignificant to protect their fragile sense of self. Jung warned us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. If someone constantly needs to dominate, interrupt, or humiliate others, it's not just bad manners. It's a trauma pattern repeating itself. Watch the small things. Do they thank the cleaner or act as if that person doesn't exist? Do they smile at the boss but roll their eyes at the staff? Do they remember names only when it benefits them? Do they crack jokes at someone's expense just to feel clever? Do they forget to return money to someone poorer than them? Every one of these actions is a leak in the unconscious, a place where empathy has been silenced by ego, because true kindness isn't selective. If it depends on who's watching, it's not kindness, it's calculation. Power without humility is just insecurity in disguise. You want to know who's truly powerful? Watch how they behave when nobody's there to praise them. You want to know who's truly worthy of respect? Watch how they treat people who can do nothing for them. The man who speaks gently to the janitor, who gives dignity to the forgotten, who doesn't change his tone depending on the audience. That man has faced his shadow and integrated it. That is what Jung meant by individuation, the journey of becoming whole. Now, give someone power and watch again. If you truly want to know who a person is, don't ask them endless questions, don't test their patience, just give them a little power, a small promotion, a touch of fame, a few extra zeros in their bank account, or even just a louder voice in a group conversation, then observe closely. That's when transformation begins. Jung said, the persona is the mask we wear in public, but once someone gains freedom, that mask begins to slip, because power doesn't poison a person, it reveals them. Before power, people work to earn love. After power, they work to command fear. Before power, they're humble because they need others. After power, they believe they're above others. It's visible in their eyes, in their tone, in the way they stop listening and start performing. They interrupt more, they laugh less, they start to believe their opinions are truth. They don't just walk, they strut. That's the power paradox. Modern neuroscience now supports what Jung hinted at a century ago. When someone gains power, the empathy centers in their brain, the mirror neurons, begin to deactivate. Their ability to feel others' emotions literally declines. The powerful stop empathizing, stop listening, stop seeing others as people. A friend becomes a fan, a parent becomes a duty, a partner becomes an accessory. It's not that they're evil, it's that their inner balance breaks. Power exposes what was already fragile inside. We meet ourselves time and again in 1,000 disguises, Jung said. Power strips away those disguises one by one. And here's the truth, power doesn't corrupt. It unmasks corruption. It's like shaking a bottle. What spills out was always there. Want to know if someone's soul is pure? Don't watch how they suffer. Everyone can be humble in pain. Watch how they behave when they succeed. Ask yourself, do they grow quieter and more grounded when they're respected? Or do they become louder, boastful, dismissive? Do they forget who helped them climb? Do they now talk endlessly about haters just to feed their ego? Do they start surrounding themselves only with people who flatter them? These aren't random quirks. They're spiritual X-rays. Real power is humility that survived success. The world is full of people who were kind until they didn't need to be. It's not that success changed them, it just revealed who they were all along. That's why history remembers the few who wore humility like armor, the leaders who didn't let power erase compassion, those who remembered where they came from, even when they reached the clouds. So if you want to test someone's soul, don't wait for their worst day, wait for their best one. When they no longer need you, when they have nothing to gain from you, that's when you'll see their truth. And if they forget you at the top, don't grieve. Be grateful, because that was never your loss. It was their unmasking. You didn't lose a friend. You saw their mask fall. Maybe they got promoted. Maybe they found new power. Maybe they suddenly started treating you differently. Colder, sharper, distant. They no longer text back as often. They correct you in meetings, not to help but to assert control. You wonder what went wrong. The truth? Nothing changed. They did not evolve, they revealed. Power is not a test, it's a trigger. It unlocks everything that was repressed. Jung warned, man is not what he thinks he is what he hides. And when you see that hidden self step forward, it's chilling. The person who once laughed with you, who seemed soft and kind, that was a performance. A carefully built persona designed to win approval. The moment they no longer needed your validation, they stopped acting. Lovers, friends, colleagues. When control shifts, the shadow takes over. The partner who now withholds affection to manipulate you. The friend who subtly mocks your success to feel superior. The co-worker who once admired you now competes with quiet hostility. These are not transformations, they're unveilings. Personas are heavy. They take energy to maintain. When someone finally gains enough control, wealth, or recognition, they stop trying to appear good. They're tired of pretending. And that's when you meet the real them, unfiltered, unapologetic, unkind. The nice texts stop, the gentle tone fades, the interest in your life vanishes. Because now they believe they don't have to care. That's not confidence. That's ego unleashed. Red flags that the mask is slipping. They stop laughing at jokes that don't center them. They begin using sarcasm as a weapon. They dismiss your feelings with, "You're too sensitive." They talk over others, especially those with less power. They rewrite memories to make themselves the hero. They crave admiration but give none. They start performing wisdom without living it, quoting philosophers online while belittling people offline. These contradictions are cracks in the mask, and through them, the shadow breathes. People often say they've changed, but no, they've just stopped pretending. Jung's work reminds us that every mask eventually slips. The persona tires, the ego relaxes, and the unconscious takes control. That's when truth walks in, uninvited and undeniable. And that is both terrifying and liberating, because once you see it, you can never unsee it. Every smile hides a secret. What if I told you that it only takes 2 moments, just 2 small cracks in time, to truly see the real person hiding behind the mask? Not hours of deep conversation, not years of friendship, not even therapy sessions filled with tears and revelations. Just 2 moments. Moments so subtle, they almost vanish if you're not paying attention. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept yourself completely." And the truth is, most people can't do that. They don't, they won't. Because what hides beneath the surface isn't always pleasant. It's raw, unfiltered, unhealed. It's fear, shame, insecurity, and sometimes darkness. That's why people smile so often. Why they speak softly, compliment you, pretend to be fine. Because the shadow within them is terrified of being seen, terrified of being known, terrified of being rejected. But here's the truth Jung discovered. The truth always escapes through the cracks. It leaks out when the ego is distracted, when the social performance falters, when the mask slips just enough. And if you know what to look for, you'll never again be deceived by a practiced smile. So let's descend into the unconscious and explore the 2 subtle signs that reveal who people truly are, what they genuinely feel, and what they hide beneath their carefully built personas. This isn't about manipulation, it's awareness. Once you grasp this, you'll start to see through everyone, not with judgment, but with understanding. Watch how they treat the powerless. If you want to know someone's true nature, don't study how they treat the wealthy, the influential, or the admired. Watch how they treat the overlooked. Observe their posture when a cleaner enters the room. Listen to their tone when talking to the delivery person. Notice their expression when a child interrupts them, because in those small, unguarded moments, their shadow reveals itself. Jung famously said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." But what if everything we ignore about others can also reflect our own truth? We live in an age obsessed with public displays of goodness, curated kindness posted online, generosity broadcast for validation. But the true measure of character shows when there's no audience, no praise, no witnesses. That's why psychologists often refer to the waiter rule. If someone treats the waiter poorly, they aren't kind, they're acting. Jung went deeper, though. He saw such behavior not merely as rudeness, but as a fracture in the soul. When someone humiliates the weak, dismisses the powerless, or mocks the defenseless, it's not confidence you're witnessing. It's pain masquerading as superiority. A superiority complex is never rooted in power. It grows from fear. Behind every boastful man is a child who once felt invisible. Behind every condescending voice is someone terrified of being small again. So they inflict that same feeling on others before it can be done to them. Jung warned us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. If someone constantly needs to dominate, insult, or belittle others, it isn't just arrogance. It's a wound trying to control its pain. Watch their small actions. Do they thank the cleaner or ignore them completely? Do they smile at the boss but roll their eyes at the staff? Do they only remember names when it benefits them? Do they make jokes at someone's expense just to feel superior? Do they borrow from those who have less and never repay, assuming silence equals forgiveness? These are not quirks. They are unconscious leaks. They reveal where empathy has been drowned out by ego. Because selective kindness isn't kindness at all. It's calculation disguised as morality. Power without humility is nothing but fear in a suit of armor. If you want to see real power, watch someone be gentle when they could be cruel. If you want to see true strength, find those who treat everyone the same, whether they're being watched or not. The one who speaks kindly to the janitor, who respects the forgotten, who remains grounded despite status. That person has faced their shadow and made peace with it. That is what Jung called becoming whole. Not perfect, but integrated. Now give someone power and observe them again. If you truly want to see someone's essence, don't interrogate them, don't wait years. Just give them power, hand them a title, a promotion, a platform, a little fame, or a few extra zeros in their account. Even a slight upper hand in a discussion is enough. Then watch closely, because power doesn't poison a person. It reveals what was already buried inside. Jung said, "The persona is the mask we wear in public, but give a man freedom and the mask begins to fall." Before power, people strive to be liked. After power, they expect obedience. Before power, they listen to others. After power, they listen only to themselves. It happens quietly, in their tone, in how they interrupt more, in how they dismiss differing opinions. Their laugh changes. Their eyes lose softness. Their empathy shrinks. It's called the power paradox. Modern neuroscience has proven what Jung sensed a century ago. When someone gains power, the empathy centers in their brain, specifically their mirror neurons, start to deactivate. The ability to feel others' emotions physically diminishes. They stop seeing you as a person and start seeing you as a function. A waiter becomes a service. A friend becomes a follower. A parent becomes a duty. A partner becomes a possession. This isn't moral failure. It's psychological blindness. Unless a person consciously works to stay humble, they fall into this trap. Jung would describe this as the breaking of the persona, the public self collapsing under its own weight. And when that happens, the shadow steps out. Because power doesn't transform people, it exposes them, like shaking a bottle. What spills out is what was always inside. So how do you spot the moment power unmasks someone? Ask, do they grow quieter or louder after success? Do they use their position to uplift others or to silence them? Do they still show gratitude or have they replaced it with entitlement? Do they interrupt more, listen less, forget who helped them rise? Do they post quotes about humility but practice arrogance in private? Because when someone no longer needs you, that's when their truth finally shows. Real power is humility that has survived success. The world is full of people who were kind only when it was convenient. They didn't change after success. They stopped pretending. That's why the greatest leaders in history, the ones who stood out, were the ones who wore humility as armor. They didn't let achievement erase their empathy. They didn't forget the ground that lifted them. If you truly want to test a soul, don't wait for its darkest day. Wait for its brightest one. Wait for success. When they no longer need your approval, when they have everything they wanted, watch how they treat those who remain below. If they forget you, celebrate it. Because you've seen their real self. Their departure wasn't a loss, it was a revelation. You didn't lose a friend. You saw their mask fall. Maybe they got promoted, gained influence, or suddenly started treating you differently. Distant, sharp, cold. They stop responding. They correct you in public. They laugh at your ideas to seem smarter. You wonder what went wrong. The truth? Nothing changed. They didn't evolve. They revealed themselves. Power doesn't invent new personalities. It uncovers hidden ones. It's painful when this happens because you believed in the mask. You believed the kindness, the laughter, the empathy were genuine. But those were performances, acts maintained for approval. Jung once said, "Man is not what he thinks he is what he hides." And when someone no longer has to impress you, the hidden parts emerge. A partner who now controls the money becomes manipulative, withholding affection to gain power. A friend who once supported your dreams now belittles them because they feel threatened. A co-worker who praised you suddenly starts undermining you because your presence reminds them of their insecurity. These aren't changes, they're unveilings. The mask simply became too heavy to wear. Personas take energy to sustain. Every smile, every kind word, every performance drains the actor. So when someone finally gains enough control, wealth, or recognition, they stop pretending. And that's when you meet the real person, the unfiltered, unapologetic version. No more soft words, no more asking how you are, no more pretending to care. Because now they think they don't have to. That's not confidence, that's ego untethered. When the mask begins to slip, you'll notice the signs. They laugh only at jokes that praise them. They use sarcasm as a weapon. They call you too sensitive when you point out disrespect. They twist stories to make themselves look right. They start treating people as accessories, not as souls. They quote wisdom online while spreading toxicity in private. These contradictions aren't accidental. They're fractures in the mask. Through those cracks, the shadow breathes. People will tell you they've changed, but they haven't. They've simply stopped performing. Jung's work teaches us that every mask eventually breaks. The persona exhausts itself, the ego relaxes, and the unconscious takes control. That's when the real person walks in, the one they've been hiding all along. It's unsettling, sometimes heartbreaking, but it's also truth. And once you see that truth, once you see beyond the performance, you can never unsee it. If someone constantly says, "I care about you," but never shows up when you need them, they don't truly care. They care about appearing like they do. If someone insists, "I'm a safe person," but uses your vulnerability as ammunition, they aren't safe. They're afraid of their own fragility. If someone claims, "I don't judge anyone," yet laughs at another's pain and spreads gossip behind closed doors, that isn't growth. That's ego disguised as self-awareness. Words are easy. Behavior never lies. Jung didn't analyze people based on what they said. He looked beyond the words, into the energy behind their actions. Words can flatter, but patterns will always reveal the truth hiding underneath. When you recognize this, don't turn to self-hate, turn to self-healing. Let's flip the mirror inward. If you call yourself kind but speak sharply when stressed, that isn't hypocrisy. It's a trigger you haven't healed. If you say you believe in self-worth but keep returning to painful relationships, that's not weakness. It's your shadow begging to be acknowledged. If you preach forgiveness yet secretly carry resentment, that isn't failure. It's your unconscious clinging to what it hasn't processed. Jung never demanded perfection. He invited awareness. Because the shadow isn't evil, it's unconscious. And until you face it, you'll keep repeating cycles while believing you're doing your best. This isn't self-blame, this is self-responsibility. It's the foundation of shadow work. Believe behavior, not promises. The world is overflowing with people who speak beautifully, yet live in contradiction. So stop judging others and yourself by intentions. Judge by consistency. If someone speaks of love but spreads fear, they don't need correction. They need reflection. And if you find yourself doing the same, you don't need shame. You need integration. That's what true self-work is about. Jung said, "We meet ourselves time and time again in 1,000 disguises." So the next time someone's words sound poetic but feel empty, don't listen to their speech, observe their walk, because your intuition already knows the truth. You just have to stop doubting it. Real kindness doesn't change depending on who's watching. It doesn't scan the room for influence or popularity. It doesn't shrink when unnoticed. Genuine kindness doesn't calculate. It treats the CEO and the janitor the same. But most people aren't kind. They're performing kindness. They're sweet to influencers, dismissive to servers, respectful to power, and cold to the powerless. That isn't compassion. It's manipulation. Jung called this the persona, the false self we create to survive society. It's the smile we wear to gain approval, the tone we use to impress, the fake humility that buys belonging. Kindness that depends on audience isn't kindness. it's strategy. Selective kindness is dangerous because it masquerades as virtue. It's emotional theater. These people know how to perform care, but not how to feel it. Their kindness comes with strings. If you're useful, they're generous. If you're powerless, they're indifferent. If you have status, they adore you. If you need help, they disappear. This isn't morality, it's transaction disguised as empathy. They don't love people, they love advantage. You can spot a transactional soul by their patterns. They offer public support, but private neglect. They flatter those above them and forget those beneath. They ghost you during hardship, yet reappear when you succeed. They show loyalty only to those who can elevate them, never to those who stood by them in silence. The hardest truth is this: they're not pretending with you. They're being authentic to their intentions. You just didn't want to believe it. This kind of selective kindness is dangerous because it deceives. It convinces you that someone is genuine when they're merely calculating worth. And if you don't learn to recognize it, you'll keep giving your heart to people offering performances. You'll share your secrets with someone collecting ammunition. You'll stay loyal to someone who's only loyal to status. You'll break yourself trying to fix people who were never whole. Jung warned us, don't trust the mask. The most dangerous people aren't openly cruel. They're those who perform goodness as camouflage. Their charm is hollow, their empathy conditional, their morality borrowed. If you fail to see between their smiles, you'll keep trusting masks instead of souls. True kindness is unconditional. To know a person's character, observe how they treat those who can do nothing for them. The waiter, the cleaner, the child, the stranger. That's where the mask dissolves. That's where the soul speaks. That's where integrity lives. Jung didn't tell us to hate humanity. He urged us to see clearly. Because when you finally learn the difference between performance and presence, you stop chasing validation and start forming genuine connections. You've been told to fear the loud, the aggressive, the openly angry. But the real danger often comes from the calm ones, the composed, the ones who never raise their voices but quietly destroy your confidence. They don't shout to hurt you. They smile while twisting your perception. Jung warned, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. And some people build entire worlds to protect themselves from mirrors. They gather yes men, silence challengers, and punish honesty. They reward compliance and label truth as rebellion. These aren't leaders, they're controllers. Think of the parent who says, "After all I've done for you," to guilt you into obedience. That's not love, that's emotional manipulation. The boss who gaslights employees with, "You're too sensitive, you misunderstood me." That isn't mentoring, it's psychological warfare. The friend who calls you dramatic whenever you stand up for yourself. These people don't crave truth, they crave control without consequence. Jung saw them clearly. They're not powerful, they're terrified of exposure. They avoid mirrors, dodge self-reflection, and silence anyone who might reveal their cracks. Because the moment they're questioned, their mask fractures. So they use guilt, silence, and charm as shields. The more they avoid being challenged, the more dangerous they become, because now their shadow operates unchecked. Watch for the red flags. They only keep people around who agree with them. They make you feel guilty for having boundaries. They dismiss accountability as drama. They label honesty as negativity. They twist your words until you apologize for their actions. They weaponize silence to punish. They refuse to admit fault, but easily spot flaws in others. These people don't want growth. They want control dressed as wisdom. Jung's insight was simple yet chilling. The longer someone avoids introspection, the darker their shadow becomes. Power itself isn't dangerous. Unchecked power is. When someone lives too long without being questioned, their ego becomes an echo chamber. They start to believe they're always right, that disagreement is disloyalty, that empathy is weakness. They see themselves as enlightened while dismissing others as unworthy. This isn't evolution, it's spiritual inflation. Don't fear the loud, fear the unquestioned. The real threat isn't the person who shouts, but the one who refuses to listen. The parent who never apologizes. The partner who never reflects. the friend who never asks if they've hurt you, the boss who calls obedience respect. These are the ones who disguise control as care, who hide cruelty behind charm, who weaponize kindness to manipulate. They aren't strong, they're scared. They aren't wise, they're lost in denial, ruled by shadows they've never dared to confront. Healing begins only when you face your own shadow. You can't read others clearly if you've never read yourself. You can't claim to recognize manipulation, projection, or ego in others if you still deny their presence within you. Before you judge how someone handles power, pause and turn the mirror inward. Ask yourself, do I crave control when I feel unseen? Do I raise my voice to regain power? Do I withdraw when I fear rejection? Do I twist love into control to avoid abandonment? Because the shadow doesn't just live in them, it breathes in you. It lives in all of us. The bravest act isn't calling someone else out, it's calling yourself in. Jung's harshest truth was that healing isn't glamorous. He didn't romanticize it with affirmations or filters. He stripped it down to its most brutal honesty. Healing is sitting with discomfort. It's admitting your patterns, owning your projections, and forgiving yourself without denying the damage you've done. It's realizing that the monsters you fear in others are reflections of your own unmet pain. Facing your shadow isn't about becoming flawless. It's about becoming whole. Because when you see both your light and your darkness, you stop needing to hide behind personas. You stop needing to perform goodness. You start living truthfully. You begin to embody the lesson Jung left for us, that self-awareness isn't about perfection, it's about integration. And only when you integrate your shadow do you finally become free. Until you confront your own darkness, you will keep projecting it onto others. Real healing isn't about journaling, meditation, or lighting candles. It's about facing the uncomfortable truth that maybe, just maybe, you were part of the problem too. It's acknowledging that your boundaries sometimes turned into walls that kept love out, not just pain. It's owning the fact that sometimes you pushed people away, not because they were harmful, but because being seen frightened you more than being alone. True shadow work is sitting with the messy, raw version of yourself and resisting the urge to run. Stop analyzing everyone else and start observing your own patterns. We are conditioned to study others, to identify their red flags, to evaluate their energy, and to expose their ego. But the real power lies in those silent moments when you witness your own behavior, especially when you hold the advantage. When you have the upper hand, do you use it to dominate or to uplift? When someone opens up to you, do you hold their vulnerability with care? Or do you store it as ammunition for later? When you're hurt, do you speak with honesty? Or do you manipulate to feel protected? That's where the real work happens. The invisible, uncomfortable, sacred space where transformation begins. Freedom doesn't start when people accept you. It begins when you no longer need to hide from yourself. You are not truly free when everyone approves of you. You are free when you can sit with your shadow and not flinch. You are not healed when you simply let go. You are healed when you allow pain to transform you from the inside out. And transformation doesn't begin by fixing others or changing the world. It begins when you adjust the lens through which you see yourself. Jung's ultimate message was clear. You are not your ego, not your mask, not your projections. You are the light that lives behind the shadow. But that light will never reveal itself until you have the courage to walk through your own darkness first. The shadow isn't your enemy, it's your guide. Stop fearing your flaws, start learning from them. Stop pretending to be perfect, start becoming whole. Every time you deny your jealousy, your anger, your insecurity, your fear, or your shame, they don't vanish. They simply retreat into hiding, waiting for the right moment to reappear through your relationships, your reactions, and your breakdowns. But when you face them directly, when you look your pain in the eye and whisper, "I see you, and I'm ready to learn," that's when the chains begin to break. That's when cycles end. That's when real freedom begins to take root. You've spent so long analyzing others, unmasking manipulation, spotting projection, decoding ego. But now the only direction left to look is inward, not to judge yourself, but to reclaim the parts you buried. Carl Jung never told us to destroy our shadows. He urged us to befriend them, because they were never evil, only exiled. The shadow has always been your abandoned self, calling you home. The privilege of your lifetime is not to become perfect, but to become real, to become who you truly are beneath the conditioning. Your shadow was never the threat. Ignoring it was. It's not the villain, it's the wounded child within you, the part that wasn't held, wasn't heard, wasn't healed. It learned to control because control felt safer than chaos. It learned to stay silent because speaking once led to shame. It learned to be angry because anger felt more powerful than fear. Beneath every sharp reaction lies a story that was never given words. Beneath every mask you wore was a soul that only wanted to be seen without performance. This is not about erasing the shadow. It's about integrating it so you can finally be whole. Shadow work isn't a passing trend. It's a spiritual awakening. This isn't about aesthetics or affirmation. It's about truth. What you've been doing here isn't just reflection. It's recognition. This was never meant to be a story about others. It was meant to be your mirror. You didn't come here to scroll or consume. You came here to remember, to peel back the layers of pretense, to question the peace you pretended to have, to stop seeking approval and start seeking truth. You came to meet the version of yourself you abandoned long ago. You've already walked through manipulation. You've confronted projection. You've questioned false versions of love. Now it's time to face yourself. You were never broken. You were buried. Every wound you've tried to hide was never meant to punish you. It was guiding you back to your power. Every scar was a message. Every heartbreak was an initiation. You weren't losing yourself. You were uncovering yourself. The final truth is this: you are the light, and the shadow was simply the path leading you back home. There is no enlightenment without shadow, no strength without struggle, no clarity without chaos. Jung never asked humanity to become flawless. He asked us to become authentic. Real people aren't polished. They're raw. They cry. They rage. They stumble. But they always return to themselves. Because enlightenment isn't about pretending to glow. It's about daring to walk through the darkness until you realize the light was never somewhere else. It was always within you, waiting for acknowledgement. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. So stop apologizing for your shadow. Start understanding it. Stop suppressing your feelings. Start listening to them. When you embrace your full self, the beautiful and the broken, nothing can be used against you anymore. Not your past, not your pain, not even your mistakes. That's what true freedom feels like. This journey was never about judgment. It was about awakening, about peeling off the layers of who you were told to be so that you can finally meet who you are. When you choose truth over comfort, you begin to heal. When you choose growth over pretending, you begin to awaken. When you choose to face your shadow, you begin to live. You stop surviving for appearances and start existing in wholeness. The shadow was never darkness meant to destroy you. It was a doorway meant to guide you back to yourself. Behind every wound lies wisdom. Behind every fear lies freedom. You don't need to become something new. You only need to remember what you were before you learn to hide. Because the next chapter of your evolution doesn't start when life gets easier. It starts the moment you decide to face yourself fully and fearlessly. You've carried the light all along. The shadow was just helping you find it.